Hello! This video will explain the formation of the brachial plexus. In order to understand the components of the brachial plexus, it's important to first describe the immediate structures leading to it. The brachial plexus arises from the 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th cervical spinal nerves, in addition to the 1st thoracic spinal nerve. Each spinal nerve consists of axons that exit the spinal canal through the intervertebral foramina. Shortly after, each spinal nerve divides into a posterior component called the dorsal ramus that innervates the cervical paraspinal muscles, and an anterior component called the ventral ramus, which is the first structure of the brachial plexus. In addition to the ventral ramus, the brachial plexus has 4 other components. A good mnemonic to remember all of the components of the brachial plexus is victorious Roman tribunes drink cold beer. The first 2 letters, V and R, for victorious Roman, are used to remind me of the ventral rami. The first structures of the brachial plexus are the cervical ventral rami of C5, C6, C7, and C8, and the 1st thoracic. The first letter of tribunes, T, is used to remind me of the second component of the brachial plexus, which are the trunks. The ventral rami of C5 and C6 form the upper trunk. The ventral ramus of C7 forms the middle trunk, and the ventral rami of C8 and T1 form the lower trunk. So there are 3 trunks: the upper trunk, the middle trunk, and the lower trunk. Next, I use the first letter of the word drink, D, to remind me of the divisions. The upper trunk divides into the anterior and posterior divisions. The middle trunk divides also into the anterior and posterior divisions. The lower trunk divides also into the anterior and posterior divisions. So we have 3 anterior divisions, 1 from each trunk, and 3 posterior divisions, each one arising from each of the trunks. Next, I go back to my mnemonic and use the first letter of the word cold, C, to remind me of the cords of the brachial plexus. The anterior division of the upper trunk and the anterior division of the middle trunk join together to form the lateral cord. The anterior division of the lower trunk continues distally without joining any other fibers to form the medial cord. The posterior divisions of the upper, middle, and lower trunks join together to form the posterior cord. So, there are 3 cords: the lateral, posterior, and medial cords. Now, I go back to my mnemonic and use the first letter of the word beer, B, to remind me of the branches of the brachial plexus. The posterior cord divides into the posterolateral branch and the posteromedial branch. The lateral cord divides into the laterolateral branch and the lateromedial branch. The medial cord divides into the mediolateral branch and the mediomedial branch. So, there are 6 branches. They constitute the distal branches of the brachial plexus. The anatomical configuration of the brachial plexus that we have just described corresponds to what is called the classic brachial plexus. The prefixed brachial plexus corresponds to one in which the ventral ramus of C4 contributes heavily to it, while there is very little to no contribution from the first thoracic spinal nerve. The postfixed brachial plexus is one in which there is little to no contribution from the fifth cervical spinal nerve, but significant contribution from the second thoracic spinal nerve. If you would like to hear more about the brachial plexus, specifically about the nerves of the brachial plexus, go to Nerves of the Brachial Plexus by Matthew Alfonso. Thank you very much for watching.